So, today we're diving into something that's honestly shaking up the entire global financial system. We're talking about the BRICS bloc and their massive ambition to build a whole new economic world order. And this isn't just talk. It could fundamentally change how money moves across the entire planet. For decades, that question was just a thought experiment, right? Kind of academic. But now you have this powerhouse group of emerging economies that are actively working to make it a reality. They're not just theorizing anymore, they're actually building. And they've got the economic firepower to make people listen. I mean, look at this. The expanded BRICS group now makes up more than 37% of the entire world's GDP. That's actually a bigger slice of the pie than the G7. So yeah, when they talk, it carries some serious weight. Okay, so what is the ultimate goal here? What's the end game? Well, it's about way more than just money. It's a whole vision for a new kind of global power structure. The big buzzword you'll hear is a multipolar world. But what does that really mean? Well, at its core, it's about creating a system where power isn't so concentrated in the West. It's about giving countries in the global South a much bigger seat at the table. And a huge, huge part of that is creating a financial system that doesn't rely on the US dollar for pretty much every single major transaction. So, to pull this off, you can't just wish for it. You need tools. You need institutions. Let's take a look at what BRICS is building in its toolkit. First off, there's the New Development Bank. You can think of it as their answer to the World Bank. And this is no small operation. They're planning to finance a staggering $30 billion in projects over just a 5-year span. That's a ton of money going into infrastructure and green energy across all the member countries. But the tool that could be the real game changer is something called BRICS Pay. This is their direct challenge to the payment systems that run the world right now. The whole idea is to let member countries trade directly with each other using their own currencies, the yuan, the ruble, the real, and completely bypass the US dollar in the process. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating, because it's all about the design. The current SWIFT system, which is what we all use, is centralized. It's pretty much based on the dollar, and it can be influenced or even controlled from a single point. BRICS Pay is being built as the polar opposite. It's decentralized. Every country runs its own part of the network. In theory, this makes the whole thing way more resistant to outside pressure or sanctions. It is a direct challenge to the very plumbing of global finance. Now, trading in your own currency is one thing, but some in the BRICS bloc have an even bigger, bolder dream: a single shared BRICS currency. But to see if that's even remotely possible, you have to pass one critical economic test. And that test is based on what's called optimum currency area theory. Now, it sounds really academic, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It just says that a single currency works best when all the countries using it are, well, kind of similar, when they react to economic problems or shocks in the same basic way. And this analogy just nails it. Imagine trying to share one car with all your friends. It's only going to work if you all have similar jobs and need to go to similar places at similar times. If one person needs it at 6 a.m. for a long commute and someone else needs it at midnight for a quick trip to the store, it's just going to be a total mess. A single currency is the same way. You all need to be driving in the same general direction. So this brings us to the multi-trillion-dollar question that economists have been looking at. When you look at these incredibly different countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now all the new members, do their economies actually move in sync? And the answers they found are, well, they're super interesting. They paint this picture of a group that has these big unified dreams, but is dealing with some very different and separate realities on the ground. So, here's the good news for anyone who wants that common currency. When the whole world gets hit with a big external shock, like a global financial crisis or a sudden spike in energy prices, the BRICS economies actually tend to react in a very similar or symmetric way. That shows there's at least some kind of alignment there. But, and this is a really big but, when the problems are internal, it's a completely different story. A supply chain problem in one country, a drop in consumer spending in another, a change in interest rates. On these domestic issues, the reactions are all over the place, totally asymmetric. So think about it. They face the outside world together, but their internal economic engines are all wired completely differently. And that economic reality really puts this whole alliance at a major crossroads. Not just economically, but politically and strategically too. And there is no doubt this alliance has momentum. It got a lot bigger at the beginning of 2024, bringing in huge energy players and other strategically key nations. That recent summit in Kazan wasn't just another meeting. It was the grand debut of this new, expanded, and potentially much more powerful group. But getting bigger is always a double-edged sword, right? Because it also brings in a whole mess of different interests. You've got countries like Russia and Iran who are under heavy sanctions. For them, getting away from the dollar isn't just a preference, it's a matter of survival. Then you have others, like Brazil's President Lula, who see it as a long-term philosophical goal. And then you have giants like India and Brazil, who, analysts say, have no real reason to rush and blow up a global system that they also get a lot of benefits from. All of this has led a lot of outside observers to start asking some pretty tough questions about how unified this alliance really is. And a recent briefing from the European Parliament really captures that skepticism perfectly. They pretty much argue that BRICS could turn out to be a paper tiger. The idea is that when you add so many countries with wildly different politics, economies, and societies, you might actually just create more internal friction that stops the group from ever truly acting as one powerful unit. So where does this all lead? Is BRICS the architect of a new global financial future, or is it a coalition that's just too diverse to hold together? Is it a new world order or a house of cards? The only thing we know for sure is that their quest to change the world has only just begun.